When I was a kid, my dad traveled a lot for work. His company was growing fast, opening new stores across the country, and 2012 was a particularly busy year for him. He was sent to Pennsylvania, and since the assignment was to last several months and it was summer, he took my mom and me with him. We were given a furnished, two-story house on the outskirts of a small town, with just over 3,000 residents. The neighborhood was new. Many of the houses were empty, and the whole area, surrounded by dense forests, felt both peaceful and eerily deserted. Fortunately, I quickly met a boy named Jamie. He was 12, just like me, and that was enough for us to become friends. We spent the summer on our bikes exploring the trails that local kids had carved out in the woods. The town of Middlesboro was old, with a history stretching back to the early 19th century, but there wasn't much to do. Even the museum was boring. Until we overheard a visitor ask an employee about the lost town. The employee brushed it off as just a legend, but those words were enough to spark my curiosity. At first, Jamie was reluctant to answer my questions, but one day he let something slip. He told me that there was supposedly a sister city to Middlesboro, somewhere in the woods, but it had vanished about a century and a half ago. No one remembered its name, and no one knew what happened to its inhabitants. They said that searching for it was a local rite of passage. But he also added a chilling detail. In the 70s, a teenager went looking for it and disappeared. His remains were found only 10 years later, deep in the woods. This story wouldn't leave me alone. A couple of weeks before we were set to leave, I convinced Jamie to go with me. We packed water, a flashlight, a camera, and a can of spray paint to mark our way. I insisted that we follow the old railroad tracks that led deeper into the woods. After several hours, we came across an old church. The dilapidated building stood among the trees. Its windows were intact but grimy, and the inscription on the plaque above the entrance had long since faded. We entered through a side door. Inside, we found portraits of stern-looking people, books in an unknown language, and a list of names, all crossed out except for one. The name Deepwood could have been the town's name. Then we entered the chapel itself. On the altar was a crucifix. Unlike everything else, the paint on its wounds was fresh, like real blood. The gaze of the stone face was unnerving. I was ready to leave, but Jamie found a trap door in the floor. Underneath, a spiral staircase led downward, and even though every fiber of my being resisted, I followed him. Below, we found a massive hall, and in its center stood a monstrous stone statue. A demon with claws and horns loomed over us, and even though it was just stone, I swear it was staring directly at us. At one point, I thought the statue tilted its head. And then it moved. We scrambled back up the trembling staircase, barely making it out. The church seemed to be holding us captive. The doors were locked, the windows too high. We were desperately ramming the door with our shoulders when the horns emerged from the trap door. By some miracle, we managed to break free. We ran until we met some adults with flashlights. They told us we found us at 4 in the morning. But we had spent less than an hour in the church. The other hours had simply disappeared. A few days later, my family left, and I never saw Jamie again. At first, I kept the police report to remember. But over time, something terrible happened. The town of Middlesboro disappeared. Websites, newspapers, records, everything vanished. Even the store my dad had opened seemed never to have existed. Jamie's name was nowhere to be found. And then the report itself disappeared. The paper turned into a blank sheet. All that remains of that town, that church, and Jamie are my memories. That's why I'm writing this story, so that there is some proof left somewhere. Maybe on the internet. After all, the internet is eternal. Although who knows? Maybe someday this story will disappear too, and then no one will remember. Not Middlesbrough, and not us.